Welcome. You're cooking with Mrs. Salisbury. Today we'll make sugar shortbread cookies. This recipe is from Mrs. Lalonde, a wonderful friend and veteran teacher. Let's get started. 2 sticks salted butter, room temperature. I cut them up a bit, and to that we will add 3/4 cup of white sugar. We need to cream these ingredients. Remember, creaming is when we evenly distribute the fat with the sugar, and then we'll have an even texture when we get ready to bake. So let's get started here, and we'll stop and start the mixer so the sugar doesn't fly out. This recipe uses room temperature butter. Don't melt it, you'll change the consistency. Room temperature. We'll mix it until the sugar and butter is creamed together, which happens pretty fast. There we go. To that, we'll add 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla, and we'll add 1 egg yolk, just the yolk. We'll save that spatula. We'll mix this together. That's it, no more. To that, we will add 2 1/4 cups of flour. Remember, I've taught you in other recipes. Remember to scoop the flour. You have to scoop the flour in to fluff it up. This is how recipes are written. Take a table knife, flip it upside down, level it off. In this bowl, I've already measured out 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm going to add a little bit at a time so it doesn't floof out, and we'll mix. A little bit more. And a little bit more. Pretty soon we'll go to a spoon. Keep the mixture about in the middle of the bowl until it starts getting mixed up before you go to the edges. Now, sometimes you have to stop and scrape the edge of the bowl. Then let's add the remainder. Okay? Put this over here, and at this point I'm going to unplug the mixer, and I'll move it over to the side because I can, yes, I put vinyl gloves on. I decided I didn't want to get my hands all dirty. If you notice, a chef's tip, I also have plastic wrap on the counter because you just fold up the mess. You don't have as much mess. So for rollout cookies, this is fantastic and saves you a lot of time. Okay, as you see, this is coming together nicely as a dough. I need to form a disc, form a ball, then make a disc. So it has to, you're gonna think it's dry. Keep mixing, you're just fine. But at this point, I use my hands, and you need that dough a bit because you have to bring it together. So this is a stiffer dough, and you will see these cookies melt in your mouth. They freeze beautifully. I would freeze them and then frost them after if you're going to freeze them. They won't stick together. Okay, well, look at this. So you can form a ball, then you're going to form a disc. The reason I form a ball, then a disc, is because it gets it in the shape I need to have it in to roll it out. When you take it out of the, so then after this, you'll need to refrigerate it for 1 to 2 hours until it's cold. The dough has to be cold because if not, it'll be like our butter pie crust and it will melt too quickly in the oven. So here you go. You see I'm going around. I'm making it smooth, nice disc, smooth. See how I'm flattening it out? Less work later on. Go around. Okay, next let's wrap it up nicely. Don't want any air getting to it. Refrigerate it flat. I'll see you when we get back. I have my oven on at 325 and we'll have an ungreased baking sheet. No grease on it at all. I took my dough out of the refrigerator. I had it in there a couple hours. You'll need to let it sit out about 15-20 minutes because this is still, I'm pushing really hard. This is still pretty hard. It broke apart. That happens. Okay, we're gonna put a little bit of flour, not a lot, just a little bit on the top, a light dusting, and then we'll start in the middle and roll. It may crack, but we'll put it back together. See how that cracked? It's okay. You'll see. I want you to know that that's normal and that we will be putting it back together again because it's still really cold, but you have to have it cold or it won't bake properly. So let's go ahead and roll it out. And see how I'm pushing it back together again? We can do that. Okay. At first it seems really difficult. People say, I can't roll it out. And then all of a sudden they go, oh my gosh, now it rolled out. So that's what's happening right now. It's rolling out. Just give us a second and it will work. Now remember, tiny bit of flour on top, only a tiny bit. You don't need a lot. This is a stiff dough. Okay, we're getting there. I just chose a round cookie cutter this time. You could have Eiffel Tower, teapots, stars, whatever you want. I just thought maybe a round cookie cutter would be fine today. You could have any shape you like. Okay. I want to roll this out to about 1/4 of an inch thick. Okay, you see how I keep coming in around the edge when it cracks a little bit? And see, there's the crack, but this just pushes back together again beautifully. That's very common. Okay, so you need to look to see if it is about 1/4 of an inch thick. This is about 1/2 an inch thick over here, so I need to make it 1/4. And then you can go around. If you think it's a little thick somewhere, just roll it a tiny bit more. Or if it's thinner, just push it back in. Okay, so with our cookie cutters, always dip them in a bit of flour. Remember, tiny bit of flour on top. And I start on the edge. Is that beautiful? They aren't going to puff up. They'll stay pretty close to the same size as they are now. They'll only puff up a tiny bit, so you don't need very much space between them. So let's go ahead. Now, after we cut these out, then we'll need to gather the dough back up again and roll it out. So I put one right next to the other. I don't want to cut into the circle, but I do one right next to the other. Like I said, these freeze beautifully. So here we go. This one cracked a little bit, so I'm going to push it together there. And it'll be just fine. All right, so let's just go ahead and put these on. That one broke, so if something broke, then you could just roll it back in. The other thing you could do is you can take a knife and go underneath and lift it up. Another good tool. That way you can just pick it right back up. So now I have this dough. I'm going to gather it back. This time will be much faster, you'll see. This is a stiffer dough than a normal sugar cookie usually. So it depends on the sugar cookie, but usually this is a stiffer dough, but I know you'll love these cookies. All right, so I'm going to gather it back up into a ball, make a disc, and again, I don't want this to be too warm. I want to keep it cool. You hear my oven on. Go around the edge. Now, lightly dust again, tiny bit on the top. Start in the middle, gently. So it'll be very good with a cup of tea. All right, let's look at this again. Make sure they're all the same size, and when you're baking cutout cookies, make sure that to bake them for the same amount of time, you need about the same size. So I can't have a really big cookie because that could take longer than a smaller one, as well as the thickness. So I'm going to look at these in about 10 minutes. I'll see if they're done in about 10 minutes. You could look at 8 if you want, at 8 minutes, but I'm going to assume 10. I'll look at 8, but I'm going to assume probably about 10 minutes. Okay, here's some more. Right, so we'll gather the rest of this up. I'll also roll this out. I'll put these in the oven and I'll see you when we come back. Welcome back. Our cookies made 24 2 3/4 inch circles. I did mine 1/4 inch thick. I said anywhere from 8 to 12 minutes. These cookies took 16 minutes. I've made large hearts and they took 13. Depends, of course, how thick that dough is. This is, as you see, about 1/4 of an inch thick. To check, they're only going to be a golden brown on the other side. To check, you have to touch the top, and if they're not firm to the touch, they're not going to be done. But just a light golden brown, not dark. So I bake them for 16 minutes. I let them set up on the cookie sheet like we talked about with the chocolate chip cookies, to let them set up, let them cool. Now you can eat them. As you see, some people have been into these. There's our timer again. You can let these set up on the cookie sheet for 5 minutes. You can eat them just like this. They're wonderful. Or you can make a powdered sugar icing. Mrs. Lalonde has 1 cup of powdered sugar, 2 tablespoons of butter, 1 tablespoon of milk, a pinch of salt, and a ½ teaspoon of vanilla. It is the perfect amount for 1 recipe. I did a light blush pink and ice these up. You can have whatever color you want. You can have sprinkles. And look at these, just beautiful. Thank you for cooking with Mrs. Salisbury. Like and subscribe. See you next time. Enjoy.